Good. Anybody not know who I am? Anybody not been here when I've been here? One, couple. I have been here before, not by myself. My wife wouldn't come. We are, plug myself real quick. I'm 28, I'm married. Next week it'll be 5 years, but I'm already kids. Let's see. I was once a heathen. Some people still think I am. I love Jesus with all my heart. I am the youth pastor at Consumed International Ministries in New London, Missouri. We originally were a Tabernacle of Praise, and we felt like it was time for us to leave. We had a vision that we felt that was couldn't be contained in the church that we were at the time. And we had a vision for young adults and youth ministry. That's what we've always been a part of. That's how Consumed International Ministries got started. We started praying on Saturday nights just to meet and get together and pray and seek God's face. We would show up on Saturday nights at 7 o'clock in the youth building, a bunch of young adults and youth, and we would play worship music and nobody would say a word. And God would show up and we would have the greatest services. That's some of the greatest times I ever had, was just showing up. And out of that, me and Corey became really good friends. Corey's the pastor of Consumed. We were talking one day, and he goes, said something about doing a drama, and I said, drama? I said, y'all do? I said, you did dramas or whatever? He goes, oh man, I love doing dramas. And I said, I love them too. I said, I used to do them when I was in youth, when I was younger and stuff like that. And I said, the youth pastor that I did them with left, and I said, we don't do them anymore. So he goes, well, let's do one. I said, all right. He goes, we'll get together. Turn walked off. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's how we started that. I found one on YouTube, and we learned it, and we breathed it out of prayer and just a short discussion. We became a traveling worship and drama team. We've been in Kentucky, Tennessee, Iowa, many places in Missouri. We go to El Salvador every year on a missions trip. We take anybody who wants to go. It's not just for Consumed. We've taken 27 people the first year, 28 people last year. We're taking 20, I think, this year. Me, Corey, Pastor Kevin Coates. If anybody knows him, he's a Marion County Sheriff. Actually just took over the jail. He went with us, and Bob Moore, who is me and Corey both work at Peters. He can air conditioning handle. And he's the head service tech there, and he's a Christian, goes to a different church, and he wanted to go with us. So us four went down and did a big police crusade in end of April. But we started a church, and we're small. We don't care. We want God to move, and you know what? It's easier for God to move if there's 15 people than if there's 2,000 people. Because if you got 2,000 people, that means you got 2,000 brains, you got 2,000 different ideas, and probably more if there's a lot of women. Sorry. I can say that because I got the microphone. But we're small, we're starting to grow. I was talking to William earlier, and we're starting to grow some, and really we're seeking God. We pray Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday nights from 6 to 8. We open it up. Anybody is welcome to come. We have live worship some nights. We're in a transition phase. I don't remember if most of y'all remember Jared. It's our worship team, plays guitar and sings. He went big time, so he's no longer with us. He comes back here and there, but he has joined a band that was on the X Factor. If anybody watched that show, he joined a band called Restless Road. They're a 3-person country band, and so he's been in Nashville and Branson and everything else. They've been working on music and cutting music and stuff like that, and they're looking to get signed in a record deal and stuff like that. So he has moved on. I told somebody earlier, I said, I told him I didn't care as long as once he hit it big, that he remembered the ministry, because I want his tithe. But no, and he comes back, and he's a big part of us still. If he was available to go to El Salvador with us this year, he would. He's got some scheduling conflicts with them, so he's not able to go. So because of that, my wife is doing worship at our church this morning. That's why she is not here. She would love to be here. She said she missed all you guys. She wanted to be here. She likes hearing me preach. But she's not going to be here because she's at worship. My mom probably would have came, but she had eye surgery a couple days ago, and so she's not supposed to drive as far, and I didn't want her to drive. So she's not here. But we're doing good. The church is going great. Like I said, we do missions in El Salvador. We raise $30,000+ usually every year to go to take with us. That includes everything. Our trips are about $1,300 a piece. That's almost $800 of that is just our plane ticket. So there's not a lot besides a plane ticket that we take. Stuff's cheap over, depending on what unless you buy Pumas, tennis shoes. Soccer shoes, stuff like that is outrageously expensive. Anything else you can buy super cheap. But we spend all that money, we raise that money, and I'm exhausted because we're not the smartest people in the world. We do God's work. We don't always do it when God wants us to do God's work. So we go to El Salvador for a week or 10 days or whatever we're going, and we get back in the middle of August, and we're all exhausted, so we take like 6 months of hibernation time. And about February, we're like, oh, we're going to El Salvador again in August. We might want to start fundraising. And so we start jamming stuff in, and usually towards the end of the summer, I am every weekend. We're doing some sort of fundraiser, whether it's softball tournaments, we've done bowling tournaments, we've sold Krispy Kreme donuts, we've sold candy bars, we've sold candles, we've had dessert auctions, spaghetti dinners, pork steak dinners. We've had all kinds of stuff. We traveled a lot prior to, and we actually not lost because I know God's going to replace it. But we lost some of our funds because we used to do a lot of traveling when we were still tabernacle to other churches, and they would take up offerings for us there. When you start a church, you can't really just pack up and shut the doors and leave. We have talked about it, and that is something that we might end up doing at some point. We might have somebody show up and preach for us, and we might go. But right now, we haven't been able to do that. So we've been busting our hump trying to raise the money and get everything taken care of. And each year our vision grows. Each year our call grows. This year we've been challenged. They want to do a couple medical missions while we're down there. And so we're looking to raise extra funds on top of everything we normally raise for that. And we also want to, the police down there are very, they're hungry. A lot of them are hungry, but they're searching. They don't know that they're corrupt. They get paid like $500 a month, if that, and a lot of the police are paid off by the drug cartel. Even if you offer them anything else, they're going to take it because it's more money for their families. And so a lot of them are paid off by the drug cartel to turn their heads, and so a lot of the police down there are corrupt. What we've started doing a few years ago is we went into a small service. They did pass a law in the late 1990s in El Salvador that they had to have a church spot in every jail in El Salvador. So they had a little, and I'm talking little, like that little corner right there. We packed the first year we packed 27 of us and probably 15 police officers into this little bitty building. And I was like this, and it was hot, and everybody stunk. And I tell you what, God moved in that place like you wouldn't believe. Holy Spirit fell in that place, and it was a simple word. It was short service, nothing spectacular. And we left, and we was like, we were done. We thought we were finished with that. The pastor that we're in touch with called us back about 6 months later and says, "Is there any way that you guys can come back down?" And we said, "Well, why is that?" And they're like, "Well, since that service, they said the police is actually broken out in a revival, but they don't know how to continue it. They're hungry. They don't understand the Holy Spirit. They don't understand a lot of things, and they need direction. They need guidance, but they want you all to come back." And so that's what. In the end of April, that's what me and Corey and Kevin, we took him because he's a pastor and he's also a Marion County Sheriff. He's been a police officer for a lot of years. So we took him and let him preach. There were 60 officers there. And they said, "Are you still coming back in August?" And we said, "Yes, we're going to bring a big group in August." And they said, "If you come back in August, we'll have 300 police officers." They actually wrote a letter. We have a certificate from El Salvador, from the head of all the police stations in El Salvador, saying that we can come, whenever we come, we can go in any police station we want to do service. It's actually made out to Consume International Ministries. But they said when we come back, they said we'll get 300 or 400 people, 300 or 400 police officers. They had a mandate out that said, look, when we went down there in April, that 10 police officers from every precinct had to be there. Had to. You can't do that in America. This, the head police of all the police wrote a letter to each precinct and said 10 people from each precinct must attend.
Amen.
And so it was awesome, and it's going great. But in the same aspect, a lot of police officers don't have Bibles down there, and so another challenge we've had is we're trying to raise money for about 400 Bibles. We found a place we can get them for about $5 a piece. We've been putting it on Facebook, and God has been blessing us just through Facebook. We've been able to, I think out of 500, we've got almost, the last time I knew we had just over 300 in a matter of 2.5 weeks, I think. We were on schedule to do about 84 Bibles a week. The first week we struggled and made it through. And then the second week, God began to pour out, and we were getting donations and everything from every direction. People that we hadn't heard of for a long time were calling us and sending us money and said, hey, I'm going to send you money. I play slow pitch softball. If anybody plays slow pitch softball, anybody? Anybody? Yeah. Slow pitch softball?
I would do it.
Huh?
I would do it.
You would do it. I play a lot of slow pitch softball. And I had some guys on my slow pitch softball team that aren't Christians said, here, man, I'm going to give you $20 for Bibles. And I'm going to talk about passion today. And I am very passionate about slow pitch softball, to the point of I'm a youth pastor, and if it come down to it, I would get kicked out of a game before I lost. I've been threatened. Me and Corey actually both, we play on the same team. We have Consume Ministries jerseys that we wear, and we were actually playing in a game, and there was this woman umpire that I swear didn't know what she was doing. And she made a few bad calls, and me and Corey said something to her, and she didn't like it, and she said, if y'all say anything else the rest of this game, she was, I'm gonna send a letter to your pastor. And I kind of looked at Corey, and I was like, tell her go ahead. He's right there. I'm like, it's not gonna matter to us. I'm like, you gotta send it to him. He's the one yelling at you. But and we didn't tell her that. But I'm very competitive, very passionate about sports. I love sports. But we play slow pitch softball in a church league in the summer, and then in the fall, probably in the middle of August or something, probably right after we get back from El Salvador, we play in what they call fall beer league is what it's called. It's actually called the Industrial League, but everybody calls it the beer league because that's what everybody does. They show up, get drunk, and play softball. And we played last year, and with our Consume Ministry jerseys on, and played, and I think there was 10 teams, and 7 of the other teams were actually named after beers. And so the funny joke was we'd be playing softball, and the week before we play, or the day before we play, Corey goes, so what beer are we playing this week? And I was like, well, I don't know, I have to look, and so I look or whatever, but we use that as a ministry tool. We do a softball tournament every year, and over half the teams are beer-sponsored teams that play in our softball tournament. We come, we give them a plaque. If they win first or second place, it's a plaque that says El Salvador 2014, 2013, whatever, first place. And then we take pictures from the year before that we went and put them on this plaque and give it to them. And you would not understand the look that these guys have when you hand them this plaque, and all these kids and all these people that are getting touched by God are on this plaque, and they just look at it and, man, that's so cool. But we use that whole day as a ministry tool, also as a fundraiser. We use it as a ministry tool as we go, because we can sit there and we can be a Christian influence that some of those people may never see. Amen. We can be a Christian influence that some of those people may never see the rest of their lives. And in between games, when we're not playing and they're not playing, we can go sit up on the hill and sit with them while they're drinking. And we're not drinking, and some people say, well, that's wrong, you shouldn't even sit by them when they're drinking. Well, Jesus didn't always hang around Christians either. That's right. Jesus hung around the sinners. He was walking and a part of the sinners of the world. And so we can go up there and sit there, and they know we're Christians, and they know we serve God, and we can just sit there and love on them and be friends with them. And we might not even have to talk about God, but you know what? When they're going through something, when they're having problems and they're dealing with something, who's the first person they're going to come to?
That's right. Yep.
I've seen it happen. Since we've been doing this, since we've been doing our tournament, we've had people that we've just talked to and friended and everything else. And in the midst of something that they're going through, I'll see them at the softball field and they'll come up to me and say, man, would you pray for me?
Amen.
I'm dealing with this. I'm dealing with this. Would you pray for me? I'm like, yeah, I'll pray for you. But in the same aspect, we've been challenged. I've been reading this book. If you don't have this book, if you don't like to read, I hate to read. This book is life-changing. It's called Jesus Culture. It is fantastic. I say, with this book and the Bible, if you read it, it'll change your life. If you read it, it'll change your life. If you act on it, it can change the whole world. It is a fantastic book. We've been reading that book, and in this book it talks about new breed revivalists. It's talking about a new breed of people that's going to come out of this world. A new breed of Christians that are going to rise up, stand up, and do things that God wants to do. They're not going to be hesitant. They're not going to be scared. They're not going to have to worry about what people think about them or what people say about them.
That's right.
They're going to, in that instant, what should have happened when that guy walked up to me at the softball field that night, when I was sweaty and dirty and just got done playing softball, whether I won or lost, what I should have done is when he walked up to me and said, will you pray for me? I should have said, yeah, give me your hands right now. Give me your hands right now. I'll pray for you right now in front of all these people. I don't care what anybody thinks, what anybody says. I'm going to pray for you and I'm going to believe healing, whatever it was, restoration, whether something happened in your family. I'm believing that your kid's going to be healed. Any sickness is going on, healing right now. Amen. That's what should have happened. That's the new breed of revivalist. That's the new breed that we're talking about. That's the new breed that God is calling us out to be. Yes. Because we can't be the Christians that we once were that stood back and watched everything. But we have to be a new breed and go show these people what's going on.
Amen.
A lot of people aren't going to come into these church doors. That's what I keep telling people. I play softball because I love it. But in the same aspect, I can use the ministry because there's guys that play softball that wouldn't think about stepping foot in a church. But they'll step foot on every softball field from here until 3 states away if they had the opportunity to. And if I can minister to them on a softball field, it's the same thing as ministering to them in a church.
Amen.
The only problem with this in church is there gets the religious spirits and everything else that look down on them for whatever's going on, because they drink, because they smoke, because they have tattoos, because they're chewing, because they have bad language. I don't ever say anything. There's guys up there and they cuss and everything else when we're playing softball and I'm sitting up there talking to them in my chair. They're cussing and they're drinking and smoking and I don't say a word. It doesn't bother me. I did it myself once in my life. I know how it is. It's an addiction. It's very, very hard stuff to overcome. I've got a guy I've been talking to now that plays on one of my softball teams. I play on many. Plays on one of my softball teams, and he doesn't even go to church. But he started reading the Bible. God's working on him.
Amen.
And he began to read the Bible. And I had one of our friends, another friend that plays softball with us, that goes to a different church. I'm not going to say a church because it doesn't matter. And he was asking him, because they work together, he said, where do you think I should start reading the Bible? I've never read the Bible before. He said, don't know anything about God. He said, where do you think I should start reading the Bible? And this guy told him to read Revelation. That's what I said. I said, and so he comes up to me one day at the softball field, and he says, hey man, I was talking to this guy, and he told me that I should start, he says, I'm just started reading the Bible. He says, I don't know a lot about God or nothing like that. And he says, what do you think? He says, he told me I should start Revelations. And I didn't say anything Gabe did. I started laughing. And I said, are you serious? And he goes, yeah. And I said, no. I said, don't do that. I said, if you read all Revelations, I said, you'll shut that thing. I said, you'll never step foot in a church in your entire life. And he kind of looked at me weird, and I'm like, dude, there's some weird stuff in there that you don't even know. I said, you don't even understand it right now. And I said, there might, 20 years later, you still might not understand some of the stuff in Revelation. And he goes, where do you think I should read? Me and my wife were standing there, and my wife spoke up, and she goes, if I was you, I would start in one of the Gospels. She goes, read the Gospels. Read of who God was. Read about God's life and what God did while He was here on this earth. Read about the things that God did, the miracles that He performed, the way He impacted the time period that He was in. Read that. we're a Pentecostal church, or we're a full gospel believing church, I guess. And so like a lot of times we would say, well, read in Acts about the falling of the Holy Spirit in the upper room. And I'm like, but I don't know. Maybe he's not going to be. Maybe he's not going to go to Assemblies of God church. Maybe he's not going to go to Pentecostal church. Maybe he's going to go to Baptist church. And if he walks in and starts speaking in tongues, they're going to throw him out.
Right.
And then he ain't going to go back to that church no more.
Right.
Now, I believe that in time, that if that's something that, if he's seeking out, if he's seeking the Holy Spirit out and the baptism is something that he needs, the Lord will give that to him. And if he needs to find another church because they don't accept it, then that's just what he'll do.
Right.
But he began to read, and he told me, and I'm not mad that I'm here today. I love this place. I've known Lance for many, many, many years. I was once a kid. I was shorter, and he was the children's pastor at Tabernacle when I was there. My mom drove the bus, and so I spent a lot of time with him. But I was talking to that guy, and he told me a couple weeks ago, and he goes, and his daughter was there. He's got a daughter. He lives with his girlfriend. They're not married. And he goes, Raylan. He goes, tell Jack where we're going to go in a couple weeks. And I was like, I figured she's in love with Jared. He's like God's gift to man. I don't know. I kind of am too. But he is, she goes, so I figured he was playing in a concert somewhere or going to go play somewhere or something like that. I figured she was going to go see him. And she said, what are you talking about? And so she had to go over and he whispered to her ear. She goes, oh, we're going to go to church. And I was like, oh, sweet, you're all going to go to church somewhere? I said, that's cool. And he goes, well, not this Sunday because I got work, because he works like a weird swing shift. He said, not this Sunday, but next Sunday. He says, we're going to come to church. I said, oh, that's cool. I said, where are you going to go? He goes, I'm going to come to your church. And I was like, well, sweet. And I was all excited. And then I found out it was today.
Aww.
And I was like, oh, ain't that awesome? He's going to go one time and never come back. I'm going to miss the one time and he gets to step in foot in church. But no, he knows most of the people that are there, and they'll love on him. They'll accept him for who he is. They know him and stuff like that. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see what God's going to do in his life. Amen. And that's just the beginning. There's a lot. I play on a team that probably there's not anybody on the team that's probably saved. And I'm believing in a few years that they're all going to be saved.
Amen.
And then they could all play on my church softball team and we would dominate. Because we did. We won first place last Monday was our last game. We had a doubleheader, and we actually took first place. We finished 8-2. We should have been undefeated. The last game we lost on purpose because we were just having fun. I normally pitch, and I let somebody else pitch. Actually, I let two other guys pitch, and it was pretty bad. We were down 9-0 after 4 innings, and finally we got tired of messing around. I batted left-handed. Half our team batted left-handed. And we got tired of messing around, and we're like, all right, let's play for real. So we all went back, and then we lost 10-9. So we almost come back, but we were finished. But passion, I want to talk about passion this morning. Passion, you can be passionate about a lot of things in life. I was just telling you, I'm passionate about softball. I'm passionate about my wife. I love her. Tag at, you better plug it, and I'm going to make her listen to it because I just said it out loud in front of a group of people. She didn't think I love her. I'm passionate about my wife. I'm passionate about the ministry that we have, Consumed. And I'm passionate about El Salvador. Even more passionate than El Salvador, I'm passionate about my church. Because, yeah, missions are great, but in my church, I have a mission field all around me. I live in New London, Missouri. There's only 1,000 people there, but there's a lot of area. I can pull from Hannibal. I can pull from New London, Center, Perry, Frankfurt. There's endless amounts. That is my main mission field. We spend a lot of time and focus on El Salvador for different things, and that's why I'm so tired all the time, because I focus so much on El Salvador, but I'm also focusing just as much, if not more, on the mission that I have called here in this place. We started a youth group a few months ago, probably 4 or 5 months ago, and I didn't know where it was going to go. I didn't know. Nobody really knew me. I did graduate from Mark Twain, which is a high school in New London. Well, it's not actually in New London. It's in a cornfield. But I did graduate from there, so I did know a few people. And first couple of weeks, it was not a whole lot. And then by 2 months in, I had like 20, 25 kids. And I was like, dang, Cora, so my youth group's bigger than your church is, bud. And he goes, yeah. He goes, but you're going to train him and teach him. And he says, then I'll have to reteach him and teach him the right stuff. And he goes, so as long as you keep him coming until I get him, he said, it's all right. And so I'm passionate about that. I'm passionate about football. Big football fan. I'm a 49ers fan. Boo. I heard a lot of boos. That's all right. They're going to win Super Bowl. Anybody a Broncos fan? No? Nobody? That's probably good. My wife's a Broncos fan. She loves Peyton Manning. And I thought she was going to lose her Christianity during the Super Bowl. It wasn't pretty. We all said, we was at the church too, so I'm like, what are you going to do here, babe? I'm like, all these church people said they're watching the Super Bowl. I said, what are you going to do? And she threw her water bottle down and walked out. She was gone for about 10 minutes. By the time she came back, they'd scored 2 more touchdowns, and then she was over it. And she laid there, she sat there on the couch and had a nasty look on her face all day and didn't say a word, and everybody knows, not say anything to her. And I was actually grateful for once in my life that the 49ers didn't go to the Super Bowl, because if the 49ers would have done that to the Broncos, I would never hear the end of it, because I would rub it in her face all the time and she would be mad. But I'm passionate about football. I'm passionate about the work that I do. Even though I complain about having to go to work every day, I wish it was easy and I could just sit on the couch and watch SportsCenter all day and make money. It's not that easy. I work hard every day. Me and Corey both do. We work full time at Peters, and he's a service tech, and I do installs. And I love it. I love the field I got into. And when I first started doing heating there, he's actually the one that got me the job, and so it worked out perfect for us because we got to spend even more time together. We both lived in Hannibal. And worked in Moberly at the time, so we drove about an hour and 15 minutes to work every day and home every day. So we got to see a lot of each other. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it. We got to connect and really hang out, and we could get in discussions. Man, there'd be times we were riding home talking, and he's crying and I'm crying, and I felt like a bunch of sissies. I'm glad it was a 2-lane road. We were driving down, nobody could pass us and see us bawling our eyes out. It was fun. But there's a lot of things. But passion, the definition of passion is a strong and barely controllable emotion, a feeling of enthusiasm or excitement for something or doing something. I want to start in Mark chapter 1. I'm going to read a few verses. It's Mark chapter 1, starting in verse 35. I'm going to go through 39. It says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon Peter and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, everyone is looking for you. Jesus replied, let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in the synagogues and driving out demons. Okay, in the first part of this, in 35 through 37, this is the story portrayed. If you study this out, this is what happened. They're sleeping. Very early in the morning, everybody's sleeping. Jesus is going to go pray. He's going to go spend time with God. Jesus gets up quietly. Jesus got up quietly because he didn't want to have to wake anybody else. It was early in the morning. He gets up and he goes prays. He goes off by himself. But as he gets up and leaves, sometime after, it doesn't say how long, sometime after, Peter wakes up. He looks over, sees it, Jesus in there, and he freaks out. He studies out, he freaks out, and he starts walking around, he wakes up all the disciples, wakes up all the people that are at the house, and he goes, where's Jesus at? Like, where'd he go? He's not here. What happened to him? What's going on? So, instead of just going, this would be me. I had the reason I'm dressed up, just so y'all know, it's not because I dress like this all the time. I'm poor, and I couldn't afford this if I tried. And I had a wedding yesterday I was in. One of my best friends got married, and I was in a wedding, and I figured I paid $150 for a tux. I'm going to get as much use out of it as I possibly can.
Yes.
So, I told the guy earlier I'm probably going to go home and sit in this and watch the NASCAR race later. But no, here's a perfect example. Friday night, we're staying, my buddies get married, and this is what we did at my wedding. I had all the groomsmen and my ushers come stay at my house. Because you're not supposed to see the bride and blah, blah, blah. And so we set up, we're going to stay at his house, and his bride was going to go, and all the bridesmaids and all that, we're going to go stay somewhere else. So we went over to the house, and I fall asleep. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning, we went to bed finally. And I'm sleeping on this chair, and I wake up, and I can't hardly feel my neck because I'm all like... And I look over, and he's gone. He was laying on the futon out in the living room, and he's gone, and I was just like, it didn't bother me a bit. I just said, oh, sweet, I can lay down finally. So I got up and just lay down, covered up, and went back to sleep. That's not what Simon did. Simon didn't do that. He woke up and he got scared. He didn't know where Jesus was. He didn't want to know where he was. So they went and hunted him, not hunted him down, but went and found him and said, Jesus, where have you been? Why did you leave us? Why didn't you wake us? Why didn't you tell us you were leaving? In that instant, Simon had passion. Simon had passion for what God was going to do, what Jesus was going to do. Simon had the passion, and he was seeking out God. He was seeking. He goes, I've lost it. I've lost it. Where'd he go? I've got to find him. I don't know what I'm going to do without him. I can't. That would be me if I lost my softball bag. I would freak out. I've done it before. If I lost my softball bat, softball equipment is outrageously expensive, so I would cry tears, and my wife would probably kill me. But that would be me. But in that instant, Jesus is gone. Peter wakes up, and because of the passion that he has and the vision that he has for Jesus and the following of Jesus, the passion in him burns so deep that he wakes everybody up. It doesn't say he got up by himself and went looking by himself. No, it was such an important thing. The passion burned so deep inside of Peter that he woke everyone up and said, we've got to go find him. We've got to go find him. He's gone somewhere and we want to be with him. We've got to go find him. So they got up and went and found him. Now, just a few chapters later, if you turn to Mark 14, in verse 32 through 42, it says they went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death, he said to them. Stay here and keep watch. Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from him. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. Simon, he said to Peter, are you asleep? Could you not keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak. Once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back again, he found them sleeping. Because their eyes were heavy, they did not know what to say to him. Returning the third time, he said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Enough, the hour's come. Look, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer. So from chapter 1, end of chapter 1, 13 chapters later in chapter 14, something happened. Something happened. Simon had the passion in chapter 1 to when Jesus got up and walked away, that he had to wake everyone in the house to go find him. But then in chapter 14, Jesus says, disciple, Simon, keep watch, pray. As Jesus leaves, he doesn't follow him. He didn't go hunt him down to see where it goes. He didn't even keep watch. Somebody could have come and killed Jesus in an instant, and there was nothing Simon could have done about it because he was sleeping. They were sleeping. The passion was gone at this point in chapter 14. The passion was gone. for Jesus at that point. So from chapter 1 to chapter 14, something big happened. Something must have happened. Something must have happened in that instant to go from waking everybody up in the house to go find Jesus to where Jesus takes you and tells you to do something. He goes off by himself and you fall asleep. I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you what happened. Jesus healed a leper. Jesus healed the woman with the issue of blood. Jesus fed 5,000. The man lowered in front of Jesus when the crowd was so big. Jesus calmed the storm. Jesus raised Lazarus from the tomb. All those things between chapter 1 and chapter 14. And somehow Simon lost the passion. You said, how is that possible? I'm thinking to myself as I read this. I'm just reading this. I wasn't there. But as I read this from chapter 1 into chapter 14, how in the world would anybody lose passion for Jesus after all that they went through? Right. All the miracles that they saw. All the things that Jesus did in front of them. Right. How in 13 chapters of this Bible, I think to myself, there's no way. I wouldn't do that. I'm so spiritual. I would never do that. I would never turn my back and fall asleep on Jesus. But I believe, I'll tell you this, I believe Peter was probably a better Christian than I was. Peter was probably a better Christian than I was. Yeah, he denied God 3 times. I tell you what, there's a lot of times I've denied God. There's a lot of times I've turned my back and walked away from God. There's a lot of times I knew what I was supposed to do and didn't do it. There was a lot of times I was getting in trouble, and the whole time I'm thinking, man, if I was serving Christ, this wouldn't be going on. There was many times I'd end up in the police station and they go, don't you go to that Tabernacle Church? I was like, no. Don't tell them. There was many times where I know I've denied God. So I believe that Peter was probably a better Christian than me. So for me to say, I don't think there's any way I would have done that. It's bogus. Peter did it. Peter denied him. Lost the passion in 13 chapters. So if he can lose passion, we all can lose our passion for Christ. We can all lose our passion for Christ. We can all lose the passion. That's why I'm bringing this. That's why we're talking about this new breed revivalist that's going to come to this place. The new breed revivalist that's going to flood the earth. It doesn't matter where it starts. It's already started. I'm going to give you a couple stories later. It's already started. This new breed revivalist is going to stand up and say, you know what? No matter what's going on, no matter what's said, no matter what's said about me, I don't care. I believe in God. I trust God. And I know He's going to get me through. And I'm going to do it. Whatever God calls me to do, whatever God urges me to do, I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to say, this is the proper thing to do. When somebody sneezes, you say, bless you. When somebody says, oh, will you pray for me? Yeah, I'll pray for you. And you turn around and walk off and you never remember it. We talk about it. I was talking about it the other day. So many times, I do it myself. I'm at work and somebody's talking about it, and they said, man, will you pray for me? And I'm like, yeah, I'll pray for you. And I turn around and walk off and go back to work and work. And I go home and I'm like, man, what did you tell me to pray about? I don't have a clue. And, but this new breed revivalist, we're going to get boldness. I'm going to pray boldness over this congregation. Amen. I'm going to pray boldness over this congregation that you become that new breed revivalist that this book talks about. Amen. The stories that are in this book. God does not make new things. God does not make new things. That sounds weird. But the second part of that thing, God does not make new things. God makes all things new. God is not going to make a new you. God's not going to make a new you. He's not going to create a new you. God is going to make you new. Amen. God is going to restore the things that you've had. He's going to restore the things that's in your life. He's going to make that boldness and that new breed revivalist come alive in you. Amen. Not that it's not there. Not that it never wasn't there. You didn't know how to use it. You didn't know how to control it. You didn't have the passion. People lose their passion all the time. It's easy. There's people in the NFL you hear about all the time. I remember the 49ers. I was so mad that they drafted this running back in the second round or something like that. He was supposed to be some big stud. He played 1 year of football. We paid him a ton of money, and he retired the next year. Said he lost his passion for football. I'm like, you're 20 years old. What do you mean you lost your passion? You ain't even been playing that long. How do you lose your passion? There's a football player that just signed with the Cowboys. I don't know who it was. He plays linebacker, I think. And he's retired 3 times. He's like 24. And every time it's because he said he's lost the passion. And he feels like God has something else for him to do. Well, either A, God's got something else for him to do and he don't want to do it, so he keeps coming back to football. Or B, football is what God wants him to do, and that's why he keeps unretiring. He just needs to figure out what it is. But they lose their passion. They lose the passion to play. Brett Favre, if he wasn't 60 years old, he still has the passion to play. I swear, he still has the passion to play. Peyton Manning, I love him. He's a great quarterback. He has passion. He has the passion to play. He has the desire to win and the passion to persevere and push on. We need to learn how to harness that, sustain it, to where we can carry it through, to where we don't have to keep coming through and we lose our passion and we go to this thing and we lose our passion. I'm a youth pastor so many times, and I talk about this all the time. The passion comes when there's a big moment, when there's a big hype, when there's a big service. When Robbie Mitchell was here, bam, there was passion, there was desire, I remember the services were amazing. Amazing services. I remember when he was here. There was passion then, there was desire, there was want. Then he left. What happened? I don't know, I haven't been here. I'm not saying that anything happened. Don't say it like that. I'm not meaning it like that. But what's happened? Are you still going with the same passion, desire that you had when Robbie Mitchell was here? Or have you fallen back? Have you fallen off? So many times in youth ministry, you go to youth camp and you go to youth conference. I was a youth kid once. I went to youth camp. I went to youth conference, tons of them. Man, I couldn't wait to get there. And I'd get there and I'd be like, woo! And I'd come back and I'm like, I'm the most on fire Christian in the world. And 2 weeks later, I was back doing what I was doing before. And I'd go 3 weeks later, another one, and I'd get fired up again. I'd come back and be like, yes, finally. No, not then either. And I'd be like, next year, do it, next year. Next year, I'll get it. And next year come, I do the same thing. So many times, because it's the hype and the excitement and the emotion. And I would have passion for the moment. But I didn't know how to sustain it. I was talking to William earlier, and I said, I'm doing through my youth group right now, because my group's small, because they shrunk, because school gets out and all the kids go in different directions, and I don't even want to know what they're out doing. But my youth group is small right now, and so I'm going through discipleship with them. Because I said, if that would have happened with me, when I was a young kid, if somebody would disciple me and taken me under their wing and taught me how to be a Christian and taught me how to get through this and taught me how to deal with this, I wouldn't have to worry about the passion. I would have the passion. I wouldn't have to worry about going to church camp or church conferences or youth conferences or anything like that to get the hype and to feel the hype, to get the passion. I wouldn't have to worry about that. It would just be there. I would know how to sustain it in my heart and in my mind. I would know. But because, and I loved all my youth pastors, don't get me wrong. I seen one of my youth pastors' wives come home for my buddy's wedding, and I love her dearly, missed her greatly, and it was great to see her. I loved all my youth pastors. Every youth pastor I had an impact on my life. Not all were good, but they all had an impact. Every person that passes through your life is going to have an impact on your life at some point, some way. Every person that you come in contact with is going to have an impact on your life. How you portray them, how you think about them, how they think about you, what they tell you, what they don't tell you, what you think about them, and all this stuff. I mean, just everything goes through your head like crazy. They all have an impact on how you think and how you act and how you. My mom used to tell me all the time when I was a kid, I'd go hang out at my buddy's house, and I'd be there for a day or two, and I'd come home, and I'd have an attitude, I guess. She said I had an attitude. Come home and have an attitude, and she goes, every time you go over to this house, you have an attitude. And I was like, whatever, Mom, shut up. You You know what you're talking about, woman. I'm 1.5 feet taller than you. But you'll probably still beat me up. I'm sitting on my room. But she used to tell me that all the time when I'd come home from somebody's house. And I was like, no, I'm not like him, Mom. And it's like, he didn't have any effect on me. And now I look back and I'm like, no, he did. I remember some of the times I come home and I acted just like him. And it drove me nuts to think about it. But we act like what we're around. We pick up the mentality of what we're around. We pick up the mentality. I go hang out with those, and some of y'all will say, well, why do you go hang out with all them guys when you're drinking beer? When they're drinking beer on the softball field? Because you know what? I hang out with church people all the time. All the time. There's very seldom not with somebody that goes to my church or that goes to a church that's a very strong Christian. And so I go hang out with them because that might be the only Christian I hang out with. And my influence and the things that I think and portray in my life and my lifestyle, the way I live my life, might rub off on them, and they might ask me a question. We've been up there, me and Corey's been up there on the hill before, and they've been sitting there drinking beer, and in the middle of them drinking their beer and cussing and everything else, they stop and start asking us questions about God, and start asking questions about the Bible. That's what I'm there for. Amen. I'm here to be an evangelist. We're all evangelists at heart. That's right. This isn't what the church is supposed to be. Yeah, we want to come together and we want to meet as a group and fellowship and have a service and man, let God's Spirit pour out in this place. But our church is this. Amen. When we walk out of this place and we see somebody that's hurting and we can go up to them and minister to them, that's our church. That's our church. That's the new breed revivalists that we're talking about today. I want to tell you a story about this book, and if you get this book, it's in this book, and it's like I said, it's excellent. We've been doing a discipleship on Tuesday nights at 6 o'clock. If anybody wants to come, you're more than welcome to come. It's in New London, right by Mom Mia's. There's a restaurant right there. But they're closed on Tuesdays, so you can't get any food. I don't know why I said that. In this book, it talks about this new breed revivalist. And this is what we want to be. This is what I'm going to challenge you to be. This guy, I'm going to set up the story. I'm going to tell you this story. This guy's sitting in a conference call. There's 8 people on this conference call. 4 from his company, 4 from another partnering company. The only reason he's on this call is because he's an IT guy. He's a technical guy. He's not supposed to say anything. They're having this big conference call about whatever's going on in the company, how the business is doing and stuff like that. He's there to answer technical questions to how he can help improve the software. He said, I very, very seldom say anything. He goes, if anything, that one of the guys that's on there will ask a question to me on purpose, just so I say something. And he goes, I don't talk. He says, I'm just sit there to listen. He said, if something goes up wrong on the conference call, I can fix it or whatever. And he goes, one of the guys that was in my part of the company I work for was talking to this partnering company, and he said they must have been good friends. And he says, how's your back doing? And she goes on, and he goes, well, he said, most of the time, when people ask you, when you're on a conference call or something, people ask you how you're doing, it's real short. Oh, I'm doing all right, I'm doing okay. You're oh, I'm not doing too bad, this, and then 15 seconds, and bam, you're done. That's it. And he goes, this lady went on he said they must have been pretty good friends. This lady went on for probably 15, 20 minutes, and talking, maybe not that long, talking about how her back, she had already had surgery. She had had surgery once before for a herniated disc, and it fixed her problem and made it better, but she was having the same problems again in a different part of her back, and it was worse than anything else. It was making her toes and legs go numb and stuff like that, and she was having to go back. She was going to have a pre-surgery appointment. She was scheduled to have surgery, and she was having a pre-surgery appointment the next day. And the whole time this lady's talking, this guy's just sitting there listening, quiet, sitting there listening, being quiet and not saying a word. And the Lord starts speaking to him, and he goes, pray for her. Pray for her. And he goes, nope. Ain't happening. He goes, and he said, the Lord just keeps speaking to him, keeps speaking to him. He says, no, I want you to pray for her. Nope. And he goes, I was trying to get out of it. He goes, he said, you know, I'm not supposed to say anything. He said, I didn't know what they were going to do. He says, they could have fired me around the spot, you know, if I spoke up or something like that. And he said, I'm just talking about God. And he goes, it could be really bad. And he goes, I don't feel comforted. I'm not going to do it. I'll email her later. I'll email her and tell her I'm praying for her later. And he says, my flesh is telling me, no. And he says, God keeps telling me, pray for her. He says, 30 seconds. She had said that it was going to be like an 8-week recuperation process if she had the surgery. And God told him, he says, all it takes is 30 seconds. He goes, if you pray for 30 seconds, he goes, you can stop her from having 8-week recovery. 8 weeks of recuperation. He goes, you can stop it if you'll stand up and pray. And he was still hesitant. And she got done praying, she got done talking to the guy, and it was kind of wrapping up, and they're getting ready to start the meeting, and he goes, ma'am, he goes, you don't know me. He goes, I'm so-and-so. He says, I'm an IT guy. He says, I don't even really ever say anything on this. He says, but I heard you talking about your back. And he goes, can I pray with you? And he goes, yeah, dead silent. He says, everybody got silent on the whole conference call. Just went, and he goes, it sat silent for a little while. And she goes, yeah, sure. You can pray for me. And he goes, now I'm really nervous. Now everybody's quiet. I'd been fine if everybody was still talking. I could just pray right to her, and nobody really knew what I was even saying. He goes, but everybody's quiet. And he goes, now I'm nervous because he goes, now I really have to pray for her. He says, it could have been easy if she said no. It would have been real easy. I could have said, oh, I did what God told me to do. I asked her if I could pray for her. She said no, and I didn't do it. Bam, done. But she said, yeah. And he goes, all right, so now I got to pray. And he goes, I didn't pray for her. I didn't pray for her. He goes, I prayed that the power of God move upon her, heal her back, whatever was going on, any pain, any discomfort that he would take out. Said he prayed a prayer. He said it wasn't nothing spectacular. He said it wasn't one of them I got up and was screaming at the conference call or nothing like that, and I was just going to town. He goes, I wasn't jumping up and down and hooping and hollering. He goes, 30 seconds. He says, I prayed. He said, and to end it, he says, I thank you, Jesus. Amen. And he goes in and got quiet. And he said, and then he said, you hear a couple of people on the conference call start snickering and laughing. And he goes, I thought I was done. He goes, he said, I almost just got and walked off and didn't even say anything. And he goes, it was quiet. And he goes, then people started laughing. He goes, he said, I thought it was funny because he says, you know, that would have been me. He goes, before I decided to become this new breed revivalist, he said, that would have been me. I would have been the one snickering and laughing. I would have been a Christian, but I would have been laughing. I'm thinking, man, I can't believe that dude just prayed for her all over his conference call and work. And he says, and then all of a sudden, she goes, wow. Wow. She goes, I do feel better. And he goes, what? She goes, I do feel better. She goes, actually, I feel a lot better. She goes, I've been in pain all day. I've been in pain all day. And she says, I don't feel anything right now. And she said, thank you very much, and blah, blah, blah. And they went on conference call, finished conference call, got off phone, bam, that was done. That was it. She went home at night. Or she went home at night, and he went home, and next morning coming to work, she had emailed him. And she goes, hey, I was just letting you know. She goes, made it through the night. She goes, I feel great. She goes, I'm going in for my pre-surgery evaluation. She goes, continued prayers would be appreciated. Because once something like that happens, where's she going to come back to? Where's she going to come back to? And so she emailed him that morning at 7 o'clock. They said she lived in California. I don't remember where he lives. And so he began to pray for her again. And he goes, later on that day, he goes, I got an email from one of her coworkers. He goes, emailed her and said, I don't know what you did. He goes, but she went to her pre-surgery evaluation and talked to the doctor. And she pretty much told the doctor, there's nothing wrong with me. I feel fine. I feel great. And the doctor questioned her, didn't believe her. He thought that she was trying to get out of the surgery, and she goes, "Are you seriously?" She goes, I was in so much pain. She goes, "There's no way I'd turn down surgery." And so he questioned her, all these different questions about how she's feeling, made her do a bunch of stuff. And he goes, "If you're fine, you can go home. You can go home." Said she went home, and he goes, "I want you to," his doctor said, "I want to tell you something though." He goes, "I don't know what happened." He goes, "But these things don't happen often." Amen. These things don't happen often. And in that instant, and it doesn't say, in that instant, she could have stood up and said, "You know what? It does happen often. But you've got to trust God. You've got to believe God. You got to know that God can do things like that." Amen. And that's the part of the new breed revivalist aspect that we need to get a hold of. That we trust God. And in the midst of that conference call, when everybody's quiet and everybody's silent and they're going on, they can say, "You know what? No matter what's going on, no matter what the situation, no matter how awkward it's going to be, I know that God's called me to do this right now. I know that God's called me to do this." I'm going to tell you another story. I think I might have told this the last time I preached up here. About the guy from Benny Hinn Ministries. You remember that? No? Sweet. I mean, it's going to be good regardless. This guy goes in and he gets radically saved. Radically saved. I wish that had been me, man. God took his time on me. I was fine with that. He's still working. But man, you see those people and they just get radically saved. They're just so deep into all this sin, and the Lord can touch them in an instant and just bam! Completely life changed for the rest of their life. And those people are on fire like you wouldn't believe. So this guy gets radically saved, and he doesn't even know about this. This isn't even in this book. Being a new breed revivalist, he's walking around the grocery store. And he goes to his checkout. He's sitting in line, and there's this older woman in front of him, and she's got hearing aids. And he's just sitting there and looking and probably checking out to buy a candy bar, because that's what I'd be doing, and a Mountain Dew. And he goes, sees her, knows her hearing aids, and he goes, "Ma'am, I noticed you have hearing aids." He goes, "Can I pray with you?" She goes, "What?" He goes, "Ma'am," he says, "I noticed you have hearing aids. Can I pray with you?" "Sure." He lays his hands on her ears, prays for her, 15, 20, 30 seconds, minute. Bam. Ears open. Just like that. Because he had faith. He had the passion to stand up and say, "I'm going to be a new breed revivalist in an instant." She is ecstatic. She can hear like she ain't never heard before in her life. And the cashier is bawling her eyes out, sitting behind the register like. And there's a phone there. All the cashiers have little phones. And he goes, "Ma'am, can I see that phone? Do y'all have an intercom system?" And she goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Can I see that phone?" And he goes, "God wants to do something in this place today." She's bawling. She didn't know what to do, man. He said, the old lady's ears done opened up. She can hear. She goes, "Might as well." Hands him his telephone, types in a little intercom button. He gets on the intercom. He says, "Attention customers. God wants to do something in this place today." He goes, "And if you're looking for something different, if you want God to do something in your life, I'll be in aisle 12. You can come meet me there." Hangs up the phone and walks aisle 12. And he's sitting there about the middle of the aisle. He's probably just sitting there thinking. And this is how I would be. Because, hey, I'm a Christian and that dude's crazy. I'd be the dude that walked down to aisle 11 and I got there like, what is that fool doing? And he said there was people and they'd come down. He said they just kind of looked down the aisle. This older guy down the aisle starts walking towards him. And he goes, "I've got carpal tunnel He goes, I teach piano lessons. I've taught piano lessons for a long time. And he says, I got carpal tunnel. And he goes, I can't teach. He said, I can't teach anymore. My hands hurt so bad. He goes, I just in so much pain. And he goes, even if I couldn't teach one more time, he goes, if I could just play my piano to God, to show him how much I love him. And boy, he just grabbed a hold of that dude's hands in an instant and began to pray for him. And immediately, as soon as he got up praying, God went like that. He had to move his hands around. And tears began to flow down his face. He goes, I don't remember the last time I didn't have pain in my hands. I don't remember the last time. I don't remember the last time didn't have pain in my hands. I can't wait to get home and to play my piano. I can't wait to get home and begin to do the things that I used to do. Thank God so much. He didn't say thank you, sir. Thank God so much. Because it wasn't about him. It wasn't about the man. The man was the one that was brave enough and bold enough to stand up and say, you know what, I'm going to be a new breed revivalist. And if God wants to do something in this place today, if God wants to do something in this grocery store of all things, I'll be the willing vessel to use. God, use me to do whatever you want to do. I don't want to get the glory for it. I don't want to get the praise for it. I want you to get the praise. I'm going to be the willing vessel, and I'll go in there and do whatever you tell me to do. That's what happened. God moved. One quick story, personal. I went to El Salvador. Of course, there's a language barrier. We only have so many interpreters that walk through me. That go with us. We had like 4 or 5. And so it's like sometimes we usually let the pastors that are with us have them most of the time. And I actually enjoy praying without one. I don't have to pray any specific prayer. They don't need to know what I'm praying. I pray in the Spirit, and the Lord knows what they're needing. That's right. And I pray and pray and pray. And so I go up to this man, and he comes up, and he's bawling his eyes out. He's standing in the back of the church. Standing in the back of the church, and he was bawling, crying. He slowly walked up, and I was walking by as he was walking up. And he had his eyes closed. He was crying. And right when he got to the edge of the altar, where the altar started from the back, he just began to lift his hands and begin to praise God. And I don't know what was going on in his life. I don't know what was going on in his life. This guy began to come up, and I was praying for somebody, and I seen him. And if you ever pray for people, there's people that God will show you. There's people God will give you when you're praying for people. There's like, when you go to a different country, it's kind of hard because they all look the same. So you got to really focus on that person that God gives you to pray for, because now you're like, it could be that one, or that one, or that one, or that one, or that one. And you say, all right, his name's Jose. Which one of y'all's name is Jose? And they all raise their hand. And God pointed that guy out to me, and so I finished praying with this person, and I walked over to him, and I grabbed it. He had his hand up, and I just put my thumb right in his palm, and he wrapped his hand around my thumb. And I went to touch him as I was going to pray for him. I just barely went to touch him, and I got right to his forehead and never touched him, and he fell out. And I was like, I got down on the floor. So I felt like God wanted me to pray with him. I got down on the floor, and I'm laying down right next to him on the ground. And I had my hand on his chest, and I began to pray for him. The Spirit of God began to move. I could feel it. Feel it moving in him. Moving all over him. I didn't know what was going on. Nobody said anything. Nobody told me. I didn't have an interpreter to find out. And I went through the rest of the service. After I got to pray with him, I was there for probably 10 or 15 minutes. Went through the rest of the service, and he come up and he goes, they were giving testimonies at the end of the week. And that man was there. Every time the rest of the week I seen him, I didn't know what he was saying. He'd come up and shake my hand, give me a hug, big smile. And the night we were giving testimony, he comes up and he goes, "Now," he says, "I don't want to get personal. There was something that was going on inside of me, personally. Some issue that I had going on in my body." And he goes, "I don't want to get into it." And he goes, "I felt God tugging me to come to that service that night." And he goes, I was sitting in the back, and he goes, "God just began to deal with me and touch me." And he says, "I began to walk forward." And he says, "Each step I took," he said, "I could feel God's presence getting stronger." And he goes, he said, "Sir, you come up, laid your hand on me, and prayed for me." He says, "And I fell to the ground." And he goes, "But I didn't feel like that was enough." And he says, and then almost instantly after he said, "I fell to the ground," he says, "I felt you put your hand on my chest and lay down next to me and continue to pray for me." And he said, the Spirit of God come over me in that instant. And he says, I'm standing here 3 days later, and he says, "I'll tell you right now," he says, "that issue and that problem that I had in my life," he said, "it's no more." He said, "It's no more. It's non-existent." He said, "It's completely gone." He says, "I haven't had a problem with it since." And he goes, "I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart." And I said, and I went up there and I said, "It was nothing that I did." I said, "God used me." I said, in that instant, I was just being that new breed revivalist I've been talking about. I had that passion in that instant, and I was willing to let God use me. I was willing. And because I was willing, God healed a man that I might never see again in the rest of my life. Somebody says, "Well, how much of an impact can I have? How much of an impact can I have on this world?" I've told somebody this one time. I said, "You know what?" I said, "In your whole entire Christianity, in the time that you walk with God," I said, "there might only be 5 people that you lead to Christ." And I said, "You might only know 3 of them." And I said, "But one of the other 2 that you don't know could be the next world evangelist that saves millions of people." And I said, "It has nothing to do with them. It's all about God. But if it wasn't for you believing and doing what God told you to do, that person would have never got saved, and those millions of people could have gone to hell." Millions of people. Because of one soul. Because of one soul. With that said, who wants to be the new breed revivalist today? Who wants to stand up and begin to stand out in God? Who's tired of sitting back and letting these things happen in our lives? That's tired of letting the devil run everything around us, to run the things in our life, to do the stuff. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the devil fighting me for this and that, and fighting my finances, and fighting my marriage, and fighting against our church, and fighting against our goal and our mission in El Salvador. I'm tired of the fights. I'm tired of my mom having physical problems with her eyes and her knees. I'm tired of all this stuff that's going on. I'm tired. It's not just my family. I'm tired of everything. I see all these people all the time that are hurting, lost, dying, and going to hell, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. I wish I was bold enough. When I went to one of those softball tournaments, I wish I was bold enough to stop in the middle of the softball tournament and say, "All right, everybody come down here and sit on the field. I'm going to have a service and I'm going to preach and y'all are going to get saved." I wish I was that bold. But I'm going to pray that each and every one of you get that boldness. Begin to become bold. Begin to become that new breed revivalist that I've been talking about, that God is calling us to be. Because we can't be like the old revivalists before, because the world's changed and the world's going to continue to change, and we're in the last hour, and if we don't step up our game, a lot of people's going to be left behind. Amen. If everybody bow their head and close their eyes, I'm going to close like this.